Hi there, my name is Rudy Taylor. I've been in law enforcement for over 23 years, and during those 23 years I've had opportunities to experience a lot of things. In particular, those situations in which individuals struggle through either natural catastrophic events or other events that put their homes at risk. And during that time, I've come to know that there are several things that are really key for you, and we're going to focus on three really critical issues. One is the ability to purify water. The second is to have a stable food source. Those are the things that will prolong life. However, there's one thing that a lot of people overlook simply because of the cost associated in having it, and that is the ability to have power, so they can charge phones, charge computers, stay in contact with family, and run those necessary electrical needs or appliances within their homes. And so let me show you this. What we're going to talk about today is this portable power station and how you can build one for yourself. Briefly, some of the capacity of this: it has a 2,000 watt peak, 2,000 watt continuous power inverter that comes with AC outlets, USB outlets for phones, computers, and others. It comes with a 30 amp solar charge controller so that you can charge the battery that this will house completely off grid. It doesn't require a wall outlet, doesn't require a generator. You'll simply charge it from the sun. It also has, in the event that you have a generator or power, it has a 1.5 amp charger that goes along with it. So with that said, let's build one. One of the first things you want to do is let's remove the inverter from the box. Okay, one of the first things you want to do is you want to remove these terminal covers, both red and black. Just set them aside. Also set the inverter aside. What I want you to look at now is the box itself. It has a false floor in it. Go ahead and lift it. And you're going to find your terminal cables. Let's go ahead and set those aside as well. In order to build this thing correctly, make sure you have a stable work surface. First thing you want to do is you want to take your dolly. This dolly is a 200-pound weight capacity dolly. You'll notice the dolly comes with a hand hole in it. What you'll want to do is take this hand hole and put it to your right hand side. Now that it's in place, you're going to take your inverter and set it on the left hand side, and the only thing that you need to make certain happens here is make certain that the inverter and all of its components, the circuit resets, the AC outlets, anything you see on the face of it is tucked just on the inside of the boundary of the dolly. That will serve as a bumper or a buffer so that no important components are actually bumped during the operation of this thing. So once you have it in place, make sure it's nice and square. We want this thing not only to operate correctly, but we want it to look good as well. So once you have it where you want it, where the entire inverter is clear of anything that may impact it on the side, now it's time we're going to kind of drill it down. So take 4 of your 3/4 inch screws. And in this case, you can utilize a drill. Just make certain that you don't over drill and strip as you impact these screws into the dolly. So once in, screw it in. Place it. Once you've placed that first screw, make certain that the inverter is still square and get ready to insert the second screw. If you have someone with you that can help you hold it down while you do so, that's beneficial. Okay, and you'll do likewise for the other 2 screws. We're going to set this dolly and inverter aside. Just roll it out of the way, and I'll need you to grab the battery box. And you'll notice that the battery box also has a removable lid. And as you look at the lid, there's a couple things you just need to know. First of all, these protrusions are actually inlets that we're going to utilize for our cable. And so at this point, it's not important how it's oriented. All I want you to focus on now is just the box itself. Because on this box, we're going to have to affix, you're going to have to put in this component. the 1.5 amp charger maintainer. So if you'll go to your 1.5 amp charger, go ahead and open that up. Okay, now what you'll notice is when you open it up, you're going to have 3 different types of metal mounts. We're only going to utilize 2 of these, and so I need you to understand how these work. Let's go ahead and just remove them from the plastic. The ones that we're going to utilize are, first of all, this small one that looks like a J. And the next one, the larger one that looks like an L with a curl tip. That's the ones we want. Okay, now if you notice, we want the 1.5 amp charger to read correctly. And so you can take your large L bracket, and you'll notice there's a hole in the top. You'll simply insert it and it wraps around the back, just like that. You'll take your small one, it has a place where it goes as well. You click that together. That is what we want it to look like. Okay, now with this in hand, you're going to take your battery box, place it in front of you with an opening facing out away from you. And what you'll want to do is simply orient this charger, because we're going to drill holes in the actual battery box. And you'll want it to look like this, so that the wires are almost perfectly aligned with the center of the box, and that the bottom of the mounts are approximately 1 inch from the bottom of the box. Once you have that configuration, it's time to drill the hole. There you go, and that's it. So at this point, go ahead and orient it back towards you. And in your packet, you should have 2 bolts with nut and washer. Go ahead and undo those. Okay, and this is going to be key for you. Now that you've drilled the holes, you have your charger placed where it's supposed to go, you need to feed the bolt with the round end from the inside of the box out, because we don't want anything that's going to damage the battery once it's inside. There. Then place your washer, then the nut. And at this point, you just want to get it started. Just like that. Now go ahead and do likewise for the bottom one. Okay, you'll need a compact Phillips head screwdriver and a 3/8 open end wrench. You can also use a crescent wrench, whatever you have handy. And you'll just want to tighten these down. There you go. Okay, that part is done. Okay, now that the box is done, let's get that dolly back in here. Okay. To orient the box appropriately, what we need to do is we need to make sure that, like we did with the inverter, we want to make sure that every portion of the battery box is within the boundaries of the dolly itself. So you just want to put it on this end, make sure that these 1.5 amp charger is in between the box and the inverter. This is how it should be placed. Once you've placed it so that every portion of the box is being protected by the dolly, then all we need to do is take 4 screws, and you will drill them in each quadrant of the box. The placement is not important for your initial one, other than make sure that the box is properly oriented. Once you screw in the first screw, check again the layout of the box. Make sure it's nice and straight, because again, we want this to not only be functional, but we want it to look good as well. So once it's there, drill in the next screw. Once that's done, the box shouldn't move at all, which would allow you to finish the next 2 screws. There you go. And it should look just like this. Okay, so now it's time to take our 30 amp solar charge controller out of the box. Okay, a couple of things I want to explain about this 30 amp solar charge controller. You'll notice that it has an LED screen. It's really it's lit quite nice once it's actually turned on, but you'll also notice it has a USB charger on the side. And on its face, you'll notice it has six screws, and they're really in sets. The first 2 are for the solar panel, the second 2 are for the battery, and the third are for any auxiliary you want to attach to it. The only things that we're concerned about here are these first 2, and that is the 2 for the solar panel and 2 for the battery. We're going to fix this 30 amp solar charge controller to the top of the battery box, and if you'll notice on the top of the box, there's a lot of verbiage, and we're going to utilize the outline of the verbiage as our fix points to where we want to drill this inverter to. So, just know this, that when it comes to orienting the solar charge controller, we want the screws to face outward, away from the inverter. And if you'll notice, the back part of the solar charge controller is lined up with the outside of the imprinted verbiage on top of the battery box. That is how we will configure this. And so the only thing that is left is to make sure that the solar charge controller is centered on the gap that exists as part of the molding of the battery box. Once you're there, you're lined up on the back of the verbiage, you've got it centered, now it's just time to drill the screws. And there you go. Okay, we're perfectly mounted, perfectly affixed. Now, we need to drill a hole into the battery box that will allow for the 2 wires, both positive and negative, to be inserted into the battery portion of the solar charge controller. So if you'll take your 2 wires, they're the long ones, and these are the ones we're going to utilize. And so what we want to do is we want to take either a 1/2 inch or a 3/8 inch bit, and you will drill a hole right in the center of this molded channel that exists right in front of the solar charge controller. So just pick a place right in the middle and drill the hole. It goes really quick. Okay, that's it. Now what we want to do is we want to take your 2 wires, both positive and negative, and these wires we're going to feed through the hole and actually secure them into the solar charge controller. But before we do, we've got to make certain that we have them oriented so that it is positive to your left and negative to your right. And once that's done, you'll want to take your 1/4 inch piece of shrink wrap or shrink tape and insert your wires through it. Okay, just like that. And that's what they should look like. Now, let's pass it through the hole. It should look just like that. Okay. So at this point, it doesn't really matter how long, where you place the tape will become kind of critical in just a few steps. So now what we want to do is we just want to introduce the positive into the positive battery portion of the solar charge controller, negative into the negative. And so you will need your Phillips. And please do not utilize power tools on this part. These solar charge controllers are somewhat delicate, so they don't take a lot of pounding. However, it doesn't require a lot of strength just to open them up. So you'll open them up completely, both of them. Start with your positive. And while you hold it, close it down, you will actually feel the jaws grab and tighten. Nice and tight, and you'll do the same with the negative. There you go. Now it's nice and snug. Now what you want to do is you want to tuck the wires back in and make certain that that shrink tape is somewhere in the middle, because essentially what that shrink tape is going to do is just going to protect the wires from any edges from the hole that we created. And so once that's in, go ahead and bring it out, and you can take either a hot hair dryer or a heat gun like I have, turn it on and shrink it. Once you've done that, go ahead and tuck it in, and that's what it should look like. Next step is now we're going to introduce our solar power ready cable connectors. And again, they're configured in the exact same way as the previous two wires were. The positive will be on the left-hand side, and negative on the right-hand side. And they're clearly marked. And so let's go ahead and open these up just like we did the previous ones. Insert the positive one. Remember, it's clearly marked with an X for positive. And then insert here, negative on the right. Go ahead and insert them. Tighten them down. There we go. You'll notice on the inverter you have a positive and a negative, and they're denoted by the colors that are on the terminal receivers. Positive, negative. So what we want to do now is we simply want to remove the nuts and bolts that come with this. So you can use either an open-end wrench or a crescent wrench. Just simply turn them. They come off pretty easily. Try to remember how they came off, because we're going to put them on the exact same fashion. Okay. Now if you'll recover your cables, go ahead and remove them. They're going to be twist tied together. Go ahead and untwist them. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin with the positive one, and they're identical on both ends, so it doesn't matter which ones. I put it so that the concave part fits flush on the terminal receiver. It really doesn't matter either way. This is just more a question of aesthetics than anything else. There you go. Now we're not going to tighten them just yet. And you'll do the same with the black. Concave end, fits flush, introduce your bolt. Okay, so at this point, just know that once these are tightened and affixed, that these cables are going to fit in up in through the battery box. And so like this, and let's go ahead and tighten it. Okay, now the last part we need, and this is a matter, it's really a safety issue. Your inverter came with caps. They actually cover the terminal lens. Now it's the time to introduce those. Just pass them through. Make sure that you have the proper color on the proper color cable. Red on red. Like that. Like that. So final step, pass them through into the box. Close and fix. So now we come to the best part of this installation. That's we're actually going to test it, make sure that it works. So what we're going to do is simply remove the battery box top. And we're going to insert the deep cycle battery. Now with regards to batteries, I've purchased mine. This is the 101 amp hour battery from Walmart. I've also purchased batteries from Costco. So it's really just your preference. My recommendation is get a battery that is at least 100 amp hours. And also make certain it's not a regular car battery. We want a deep cycle marine battery. So once you have one in hand, all you have to do is put it inside the box. And they are quite heavy. That's why a dolly is needed. Then all that is needed here is we're going to connect the battery terminal, and that is. So remember, red is positive, black is negative. And the battery posts on batteries are clearly marked as well. Red, positive. And by the way, though, on occasion you're going to get a spark when you attach the wires. Don't let that bother you. It's just an attention getter. Just like that. Okay. Once we have that inserted, go ahead and close your box. And again, in this case, we're not going to hook up the solar charge controller. You would hook that up in the exact same fashion. Red to positive, black to negative. Okay, once it's on, we're just going to test it. You'll notice on the inverter you have just an on and off button. Press and hold. Great. Okay, and right now it's telling us that it's putting out just over 12 volts. This is a 12 volt system, so it's working appropriately. Now it's just a matter of plugging in those things that you think you want to plug in. Charging your phones, your computers, lighting, even some appliances or power tools. Whatever you feel is needed in an emergency, go ahead and plug it in. Every appliance that you want to plug into this thing to run will have an affixed either decal or metal plate. It'll denote how much power is needed to run that appliance for a span of 1 hour. And in most cases it's going to be denoted either in watts, volts, or amps. And there's an easy way to convert those things, but just know this, that this has a capacity of giving you 2,000 watts continuous, and that means that it can run a lot of things. This can easily run a TV, VCR for a span of 4 hours, depending on the size of the battery. It can run LED lights for hundreds of hours. It can cycle a refrigerator, it can run power tools, it will run a lot of things, with the exception of those appliances that have a heating element in them. One, obviously, it's not going to run your stove. It's not going to run a hair dryer on high. It won't run a pancake maker. It won't run a toaster. Those things with heating elements that glow bright red require a tremendous amount of energy. This inverter does not have the capacity, and neither does the battery for any extended period of time. But absent those things, you can run a lot of things for a lot of time, and the best thing about it is that you can recharge this thing completely off grid. So if you have a solar panel, you have a solar charge controller to receive the power and charge your battery indefinitely. Well, it looks like we're done now. I hope you've had a great time building this thing. And last, let me just add this. It's been my experience, particularly where I live, we've had a variety of power outages, some of which have been extended. We pull these things out, they work every time. I've had neighbors and friends and neighbors that have seen these things and have one for their own, which I have provided for, and in every case they are happy with it and have utilized it and say it works great. I hope it works great for you. I hope that you have a greater sense of assurance that you can work through any either extended power outage or catastrophic event that you may be facing, and it'll give you just a greater measure of comfort in knowing that. Anyway, I've enjoyed spending this time with you. I hope this has been helpful to you, and enjoy your portable power station.